Well, tourism in the city appears to be recouping some losses that we saw in the first quarter of the year, but it's still down from 2024 amid economic and geopolitical uncertainty. Destination Toronto says that visitors coming to the city was down 4% on a year-over-year basis from January to March. However, that is typically a slow period in tourism, and the warmer weather seems to have helped the industry. Well, in June, visitor arrivals was just 2% lower, and it appears that the next couple of months could be even better. So as of July, advanced bookings for hotels in August and September, they were up about 10%. Now, for a closer look at this, we're joined live by Kelly Jackson, Vice President of Destination Development at Destination Toronto. So thanks a lot for joining us. I want to start with this. When we're talking about this announcement, Toronto's tourism outlook is solid. Those are the words right there.
That's right. As you mentioned, at the beginning of the year, we definitely saw an impact in terms of visitation. And, certainly there's a lot of economic uncertainty, obviously talk about tariffs, trade, the tone of the relationship between the U.S. and Canada. All of these factors, were affecting the numbers earlier in the year. But, now as we're well on our way into summer, the outlook is looking really solid. And as you noted, we've already made up some of that ground, and we're seeing I would say what we're seeing is just a change right now in the type of visitors that are coming to the city this summer.
Yeah, Kelly, I wanted to ask you about that in terms of the type of visitors. Are we just getting, the leisure travelers, families coming here for vacations? Or what about those, those big ticket, like business conferences and meetings?
Yeah, actually, that's a great thing to point out, because a lot of people don't think about that when they think about tourism. But this summer in Toronto, there are a number of major meetings and conventions that are attracting, tens of thousands of delegates to come to the city. And those individuals that come here, they spend time, of course, going to that meeting or convention, but they are also spending time eating in Toronto restaurants, staying in Toronto hotels, exploring the city, seeing our attractions, and, maybe catching a concert while they're here. So, and they often bring their families along with them. We're seeing a real mix of business and leisure travel as one of the biggest trends within the travel industry. And Toronto is definitely really well positioned to capitalize on that. I could just say, just last week we had 8,000 delegates in town just for one convention alone, focused on research related to Alzheimer's.
Okay, Kelly, I have to ask you about this. Destination Toronto opening new offices in the UK and Germany. How does that work and why?
Well, last year we saw quite an increase in the number of travelers coming from the UK and Germany and from some of those surrounding European countries. And it was an opportunity to get back into those markets and have some on-the-ground representation, and really to work with tour operators, to work with media partners there, and to really position Toronto as a place where people want to come and do business, and people want to come and travel and have their vacations. In June, this June just passed alone, we saw from both Germany and from the UK that visitation was up 6% year over year. And we saw some very solid numbers in terms of increases throughout the spring compared to the year previous. So there's a real interest in those markets. And as well, I think it's, really important that we look ahead to next year with the World Cup coming, and position Toronto as a place where many of those European soccer fans may want to come and take in some matches.
And before I let you go, I have to ask you about the trickle-down effect, the hospitality industry and everyone related to that when it comes to jobs.
Yeah, I mean, tourism is a huge driver of economic impact in Toronto. We're looking at, I'd say, easily 70,000 jobs that are directly related to the tourism industry here in the city. Last year, when we looked at the level of visitor spending, it was at a record level. We had almost 9 million overnight visitors spend $9 billion. And so, that $9 billion of visitor spending, gets amplified into a further $13 billion worth of economic impact. And that's because when a visitor comes and, taps their card to pay for a dinner that they had at one of our fabulous Toronto restaurants, they are putting new money into the economy. It's an export, and we don't normally think about it that way. So it's been, I think, great to see that, as we move through this summer, and summer's always been such a popular time for the city as a destination, that we're able to continue to attract international visitors.
And that's exactly what we like to hear. So as the VP of Destination Development at Destination Toronto, keep up the good work.
Thank you.